the trial ended for the police officer Martyn Blake, who was found not guilty of murder of Chris Kaba. Just briefly for those that are unaware of the story, Chris Kaba was killed, 24-year-old black man was killed a couple of years ago after he was shot dead by a Met police officer after he was driving a car that 24 hours earlier was involved in a shooting. The car didn't belong to Chris Kaba. Chris Kaba, once he was being followed by the police officers, he was cornered in a road in Camberwell, initially refused to get out of the car. He tried to drive through a couple of other cars to escape from the cul-de-sac that was created by these police officers in their cars. It's important to know that he was unarmed. He had one hand on the steering wheel, one hand in the air when he was shot in the head and killed. The black community, and much of London to be fair, but the black community in particular, were outraged by this because, as we all know, we have history of killings at the hands of the police forces in this country. And yesterday, Martyn Blake was found not guilty. This is literally less than 24 hours old, and the response you'll see on social media, I've got lots of friends that were having a peaceful protest outside of the Crown Court yesterday, are very angry about this. I just thought it was worth having a discussion around this and yet another example of a black person, a black man dying at the hands of the police officer, and the police officer getting away with it. That's probably the wrong way of putting it. He was found not guilty. But I read yesterday also there's been 83 deaths at the hands of police officers since 1991, and not one police officer has been found guilty. And the disturbing thing for me, Hugh, is that the bar for finding a police officer guilty of murder is extremely high. Basically, as long as they can say that I felt that I or one of my colleagues were in harm's way or in danger, that can justify pulling the trigger. And I think that is really, really, really foul, in my opinion, because you could just say, I thought he might have a gun, I thought he might have a weapon, so I had to do what and somebody's lost a son. And I just thought it would be worth hearing, we're two black men, we're from London, where this happened in Brixton and Camberwell was where I was born, I went to school, so this is even more personal and prevalent for me because it's where I grew up, I know those roads very well. But for you, I don't really have a pertinent question other than, what's your take on another chapter in a breakdown in trust between our community and the police officers in this country?
I think we need to separate it. So let's go through it, I think, because let's deal with convictions for murder. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way. So let's start with that. I'm always reticent to make commentary on whether someone should or shouldn't be found guilty without being in court, seeing all of the evidence given, and also understanding the law itself that you're trying to find someone guilty or not guilty of. Clearly, the main defence here was Chris Kaba could have used his vehicle to cause serious harm, injure or kill someone. And the defence was the belief that had he been allowed to continue driving his car,
he could have caused harm.
Yeah. Well, he had to be stopped from driving his car. Now, a bullet to the head, for me, is a very strong method of stopping him from doing that, to be perfectly honest. But that doesn't mean that the person's guilty of murder, right? So I think those things are different. That's why you have to look at the laws. For me, it's the protest, I don't think, is over necessarily this specific individual being found guilty of murder or a wider sense of injustice at the actions of the police. I think it just goes down as another example of helplessness, hopelessness, a lack of being able to defend yourself and your community when it comes to any incident involving particularly a metropolitan police officer. So that's why I think it's slightly different. Like, we could have had a conversation around whether this person should or shouldn't be found guilty of this specific crime. I think that's part A, but I think part B is, let's just add this to the list of another example of where black communities in the UK and in London just can't get justice. They can't. There is no avenue for that. You mentioned the statistics there, and that I think is the real heart of the process of the protest. Again, the lawyers can argue whether or not Chris Kaba should have been shot. For me, it's a very difficult thing for me to pass comment on that, as painful as it is. You almost feel like it was never going to be a case that he was going to be found guilty from the moment it happened.
Why?
Because it just doesn't happen. Like, let's be realistic, it doesn't happen. Like, how are you going to find a Metropolitan Police officer guilty of murder? How? Let's be honest. For something that they've done in the line of duty, you're not. Especially once we saw police officers go on strike themselves over the charge of murder when it first happened. You had Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary at the time, asking for a review for the CPS for making the charge against him, said it was kind of unacceptable. And you had others in politics at the time fighting that corner as well. But also you have to understand the structures of white supremacy, of institutionalized racism in this country, and with reality, the police forces around the country, Metropolitan Police Force, and the judiciary are a huge part of that. And let's be honest, until like minority ethnic people are the majority of the country, or more likely the majority of people working within those institutions, that won't change.
So is that then the answer? We need to have more people that are not only black and brown in these positions that make decisions. We just need even white people that aren't racist or have, what the word is, or don't have the legacy and history of coming from racist communities to be in these positions that actually can give people a fair hearing in order for black people to get justice. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's fanciful, to be honest, because of the demographics of the country. So unless you see a huge sway towards ethnic minorities suddenly wanting to become police officers, that won't change.
So it's just a reminder then that as black people, not that we didn't know it, but it's just a reminder that you're not going to get justice when something like this happens. And again, I think you're right. Without knowing the details of the case, the minutiae detail of the case, the law, it's very difficult to say whether he should have been found guilty or not. But it's just a reminder that as black men, we are susceptible and we are very easily accessible to this thing happening to us. Not only happening to us, but then not getting any idea of justice at the back of it.
Listen, the Metropolitan Police, whatever they try and say about their approaches and all of that stuff, like they target, I'm happy to say that they target specific communities. For me, the reality of that is it's more based on class than race. It's just unfortunate that people from immigrant backgrounds, people from a lot of minority ethnic communities happen to fall into the classes, the socioeconomic classes that are targeted. For example, the Metropolitan Police can't claim that they truly do their job when it comes to tackling drugs, for example, if they put all of their efforts into targeting South London, East London, but they don't go to Mayfair on a Friday night. They don't go to Canary Wharf on a Friday night, where people are leaving offices of major banks, of major institutions in this country with packets of cocaine in their pockets. We know that the cocaine issue in this country is huge. White British people are not stopped and searched on a Friday night. They're not. You don't go down to Essex. I'm not even going to, say that it's just a place like Essex or East London or, Liverpool or it's everywhere in this country. Every single community in this country, cocaine is an issue. So if they want to solve the issue when it comes to drugs, why do they stop and search young black kids in London predominantly under the claim that there's an issue with drugs? Or even, we've seen it before with people getting stopped in their cars. Oh yeah, we know that the county lines, anytime someone's driving their nice car along the motorway or in an area, county lines.
It must be
County lines. I'm like, I don't understand. What do you mean? Yeah, they operate in, we've all heard this. They got nice cars. They drive. really. So you think that you stop every nice car, you think that if you stop every nice car, that County Lines people won't be like, let's not drive a nice car. Like, you think we're idiots? You think, you know, like, come on, like, and that happened. Listen, you go South London, you get the whole section. Oh, something happened. Look it up on the ONS, but the percentage of stop and search. Stop and search, you have to give a reason. You can also give a no reason. Like the police are allowed to say it was just a routine because that's the thing. They're allowed to just do a routine. But the routine stop and search, which officially I think is labelled no reason, the percentage difference, you're wildly, vastly more likely to be stopped if you're black for the reason of no reason than you are any other community. But again, I do think class plays a big role in this. Because people always go, oh, you know, you're going to talk about race, you're going to talk about race, you're going to talk about race. But there is a big intersectionality there. You know, we do not see these things happen to people who are middle class and who are upper class. And I know people will say, well, those people don't need to be involved in crime, this, that, and the. I know people might claim that. But again, when the police pull over cars, they don't know. They don't know that your nice BMW. You see what I mean? Like if they're gonna pull us over on the claim that nice cars operate in this area, I'm like watching.
There's a lot of white
I'm watching the nice cars going by, and I'm like, I'm not sure the car was the predominant factor
why you stopped me.
in you stopping me, and that I think is the issue that they've never really got hold of. For me, you know, there's an element of they need to just review how policing works, but at the same time, you know, we need to protest to get that equality. You know, and there shouldn't be. You know, the no justice, no peace thing for me, it's real. Until they change their procedures, we shouldn't let these people sleep. And you know, this is nothing against the Metropolitan Police, and individual police officers will say, that's not me, that's why I joined the force, this, that and the other. Unfortunately, too many of your colleagues, too many of the people that you work for or with, you know, have either been raised in a household or raised in a time of this country where they haven't been able to remove the biases that they have. That's the reality. Just
before we move on, I just wanted to kind of Mark Rowley, the head of the Met Police, he did an address after the verdict was given. And I've got just a quote from his speech. He says, but for most of all, I worry for the public. The more we crush the spirit of good officers, the less they can fight crime. That risks London becoming more safe. And I just thought it was a really, really perverse and foul.
He's an idiot.
Framing of. He is. Yeah. But I just thought it was a really insensitive way of basically saying, look, if you guys keep putting pressure on my guys, we can't police the streets safely, and you'll be the ones that lose in the end. And I just thought at a time when the family have just heard the verdict against what they were hoping would happen, I just thought it was the worst thing you could have said.
He's a terrible appointment.
Oh, it was so bad.
In 2024, because he hasn't got a great grasp of
the problem.
The themes of racism, discrimination, equality. Like, if someone to be in his position should have
doesn't seem to want to learn to understand. It seems to be there's no problem, or the problem that I understand it, I'm addressing it, and leave me to address it. And it's like you're not even trying to understand the problem.
The thing is, the main positive for me out of this is the charge for murder that the CPS gave, because for all of those who go out with a lethal weapon in their hand in the duty of being a police officer, they now know before they pull that trigger, even if it's a split second, that there is a possibility that I might be charged with murder and who knows, found guilty. And but so I need to be.
But do they?
But now they know they'll at least be charged. Okay, well now they know they'll at least be charged. And if you get charged, there's a chance you could get found guilty. I guess you've been charged, right?
Small chance.
But even so, you know, the fact that the officer was named, he didn't want to be named. You know, that is a big deal, because that you know will stay with him. So listen, I get it. I don't want innocent people to be out there. You know, again, I wasn't in the courtroom, so I'm not gonna. But officially innocent person found by a courtroom to be innocent person, to have their name out there or their life ruined, particularly if they actually did nothing wrong. But at the same time, you know, once you take on that role, once you pick up that weapon, once you have people's lives in your hand, that charge will let all the other officers know you need to think seriously about whether you discharge your weapon. And obviously, some weren't thinking seriously enough and haven't been in the past. So that's the only positive for me. If more officers think, do I need to press the trigger? And that saves lives, then that could be a positive.
Let's move on now to something that doesn't involve loss of life, but something I think is actually really important. And that is a story from a few weeks ago.
Sorry, before we move on, I didn't really get your view on the whole situation. So how are you feeling about it, I guess?
I think you used the word earlier on, hopeless. I think you said the word hopeless. And I think, again, without knowing the nitty gritty of the case, it is difficult to kind of sit here and say, this guy was guilty and this guy should have gone to prison. I don't know the minutiae of the case. But it leaves me hopeless that 83 times someone has died at the hands of the police and not one has been charged for murder. You can't tell me that none of those officers in those 83 occasions were guilty. So if they can't do it after 82 times, it makes me think to myself, well, there's never going to be a chance when a police officer is going to kill someone and be charged with murder for it.
But you have to understand that, you know, they don't write the laws, they enforce the laws, the police, but obviously they are part of that system. And people that have an influence in how the laws are written are obviously not going to write laws in a way where they're going to be found guilty.
So that for Christmas and all that.
Yeah, that's the reality.
And that was my feeling, and obviously our thoughts go out. It was a couple of years ago to the Kaba family, and
I'm sure, but that verdict would have brought a lot more pain back for them. So again, our condolences go to the Kaba family.